Through the Looking Glass, Part 1, Chapter 7, Exploration. As Shadow awoke from his nap, he groggily rubbed his eyes and let out a small yawn. That was the best nap, well, sleep in general, that he's had in a while. Wade's bed just felt more comfortable, especially his comforter. The weight of it made him feel like someone was hugging him. After a while, a smell hit him. It smelled like the greasy triangular dough tomato sauce and cheese thing Wade had him eat last night. Shadow would never admit it, but the thought of eating the substance again was definitely the reason why he was rushing to the kitchen. Once he reached the kitchen, he was truly surprised to see a plate of the food and water sitting next to it on the table. He climbed the chair to sit, when he noticed there was a note next to the plate. There was a swarm of thoughts and feelings that flooded Shadow as he read the sloppy written note. Wade possibly has the worst handwriting to ever exist. Wade came home from work. What for? He saw him sleeping in his bed. He made him lunch and gave him the option to take Tylenol. He left a note. That was the one that really stuck with him. Wade left him a note. For some reason, he came back home and decided to make lunch for Shadow with the note. All for him. Shadow hated the way this made him feel. None of this could be real. Wade wasn't real. This all had to be fake or some sort of trick. There's no way. But also, he couldn't stop the smile that reached his lips as he stared at the plate of food and the note. Shadow didn't want the food to get cold, so he started to eat. He took the Tylenol first. It wasn't the strongest medication, but it really did help ease some of the pain. After swallowing the pills, Shadow was ready to bite into the triangular food. Pizza, he reminded himself. Wade called it pizza. Maybe it was because the food Shadow was given at the facility was absolutely repulsive, but this pizza was the best thing he'd ever had. Shadow was sure he could eat it all day and every day for the rest of time. The meal was gone too quickly, and Shadow couldn't stop the small frown that reached his face. He let the dirty dishes at the table and walked over to the guest room, where Wade had him staying. He looked at the time on the clock. 1:30 p.m. Wade wouldn't be back for another 3.5 hours. What was he even supposed to do? Shadow plopped onto the bed and stared at the ceiling. He let out a huge sigh. This was boring. After a couple of minutes, an idea hit him. He still never really explored the house he was held in. He should always know his surroundings. So that's how Shadow found himself exploring Wade's house. He started with the rooms he knew the best, the kitchen and living room. The living room was fairly bare, besides basic furniture and a TV. The kitchen was fine, but Shadow couldn't help but be disappointed in the man once he opened his fridge. The thing was basically bare. Does Wade not understand that there should be food in his home? Shadow explored the guest room and the bathroom next. Both were pretty basic and nothing to be too excited about. But he did find some cool books in the guest room closet. Next, Shadow went all the way to the end of the house's main hallway. The room on the right housed the washer and dryer, but it was the room on the left that intrigued him the most. Unlike the other doors in the house, this one was aged and lacked bright color. It seemed old, like it'd been here forever. Shadow tried to open the door, but it was locked. None of the rooms were locked, not even Wayne's. So why was this one? What made it so special? What was behind the door? Shadow made sure to catalog this information in his brain, so he could ask Wade about it later. Shadow wanted to check out Wade's room last, so he went over to the garage. It was nothing super special, just full of clutter. It was built for 2 cars, but the only mode of transportation in it was a broken bike on top of 2 milk crates. Overall, the house was just old. Most of the space seemed to lack a lot of cohesive character. It was a hodgepodge of stuff. Shadow didn't mind that too much, though. It seemed to fit Wade. Walking back into the house, Shadow went over to Wade's room, now not under the influence of post-bath haze. He could fully take in Wade's room. It wasn't as bad as he thought it would be. There was Wade's full-sized bed in the middle of the room, covered in a gray bedding. Random shoes, socks, and trinkets littered the floor, despite there being a decent-sized closet. Shadow was impressed that he managed to not step on anything when he came in here. There was a nightstand next to the bed with a lamp and alarm clock on the top, and 2 drawers. Shadow opened them. The bottom drawer was mostly random things like mail, a flashlight, and batteries. The top drawer contained medication, tissues, and a letter of some sort. Once he was finished looking, Shadow walked towards the closet. Wade's closet was just work clothes and some casual clothes, and shoes. Not sure why he expected more from the man. In the back, he saw a small cardboard box filled with tapes of some sort. Well, they were really tapes. They were circular, small, and reflective. Now sitting on the floor, Shadow pulled the box closer to him and went through its contents. The circular stuff had names on them like The Cure, Nirvana, and the 9 Inch Nails. Shadow looked around for something he could play them with. He stumbled upon a radio-like object and pressed the open button. Shadow flinched slightly when the top sprung open, revealing an empty space with a black peg in the middle. It looked like it perfectly fit the circular things, so he took a random one and snapped it in place. Shadow closed the lid and pressed the button that said play. The sound of a guitar filled the air and a woman's voice began to sing. As Shadow heard the words, he could feel the tears swelling in his eyes. It was like the song knew exactly how he was feeling, and expressed it in the most perfect way possible. Despite the tears, he wanted to hear more, and that's how Shadow found himself laying on the floor in front of Wade's closet, lost in the song and replaying it each time it ended. Wade looked at the clock in his patrol car as he pulled into the driveway and parked. 5 p.m. on the dot, just like he'd said he would. Wade unlocked the door and stepped into the house. He sat down on the couch, removed his shoes, unbuttoned his shirt, and placed his badge on the side table. He began to wonder what Shadow was doing when the sound of music reached his ears. Wade got up to see what it was and followed the sound. He reached the entrance of his bedroom and watched as Shadow lay sprawled out on his closet floor. He recognized the song immediately. It was that song, a song he hasn't listened to in so long. It just reminded him of her and all he's lost. Wade cleared his throat, hoping to get the hedgehog's attention. He watched as Shadow scrambled in surprise to stop the music. The kid looked up at him, and he could tell he was slightly embarrassed.
Sorry for going through your stuff. I was just exploring.
It's okay, I don't mind.
The air was awkward. Wade didn't like it.
So, you like this song?
Yes.
Wade walked over to his nightstand and placed his gun and holster in it. Once Shadow was out of the room, he'd properly store it. The hedgehog stared at him like he was scared to move. Wade walked over to where Shadow was and sat down next to him.
That song is one of my favorites. I haven't listened to it in a while though.
Wade began to sift through the other CDs.
Why?
Shadow looked up at him.
It makes me cry.
Was the simplest way for Wade to express the multitude of feelings behind the answer to that question. Shadow looked to the ground.
Me too, but I couldn't stop listening to it.
I understand.
The two just sat for a bit. Wade wasn't sure what to do. His hands reached for another CD that he really liked. Maybe Shadow would want to hear it.
Would you want to hear another song?
Wade was hopeful. Shadow just nodded. Wade had come to realize that the hedgehog didn't really enjoy saying too much, but a nod was as good as anything. Wade took out the previous CD and inserted Around the Fur by pt.1. It was one of his favorite albums growing up, even though his mom hated it when he would blast it super loud around the house. He skipped to track 8 and let the song play. Wade watched as Shadow looked enamored with the sound. It made his heart swell a bit. Sure, Wade and Tom were best friends, but they don't really have the same taste in music, which isn't a bad thing. But Wade always wished he had someone to share this with. Wade smiled as he saw the hedgehog rock to the music. When the song ended, Wade paused the CD.
So, what did you think?
Wade looked at Shadow with a smile. Shadow looked up at him with stars in his eyes.
That was awesome.
Wow, awesome. That was the most Wade has heard Shadow describe anything. He wanted to show it more, but it was getting late. Maybe tomorrow.
I'm glad you liked it. Why don't you wash up for dinner?
Wade started to stand up. He couldn't help but notice the frown on Shadow's face at the idea of having to stop listening to the music.
Don't worry, kid. We can listen to more tomorrow.
Shadow looked a little shocked, like he hadn't expected Wade to notice his facial expression. His face heated up, and he noticed before leaving the room to wash his hands. Once Wade was sure Shadow was gone, he couldn't help but do a little dance. He was so happy right now. Wade composed himself and walked back over to his nightstand to get his gun holster so he could properly store it away. Once he finished that, he changed into some gray sweatpants and a Nirvana shirt that he got a while ago. It was a bit tight, but he thought Shadow might think it was cool. After washing his hands, Wade walked into the kitchen and found Shadow already at the table.
So what do you want for dinner?
Wade asked, looking through his fridge. Man, it was pretty bare. He should probably go shopping.
Pizza?
Well, we don't really have much, so pizza it is, I guess.
Wade heated up the rest of the pizza and grabbed some plates. As the two ate, Wade couldn't help but think how nice this was. He almost wished this could last forever.